Hello, class. Our lesson today is solving two-step inequalities, and you got to graph the solution on a number line. Okay, what I put up here, I put a few of the rules, little clips of art. Okay, let's start with the first one. It's rules to remember. When you solve these inequality type equations, they're really just like the regular equations we used to solve with the equal sign. Okay, the sign just changed. It's greater than, less than or equal to, and greater than or equal to. Okay, so it's just changed. So the problem is, when you solve an equation, you got to get the variable, the x, the y, the z, all by itself. So to do that, if you have addition, you got to do subtraction. You got to do the inverse operations. If you got multiplication, you got to do division. If you get division, you got to do multiplication. And you just start moving things around on the board, and that's all there is to it. Then to the right of that, I put the inequality type signs. Okay, greater than or equal to, what they look like. When you put it on a number line, it's got an open dot. It's got a closed dot if it's greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to. I always look at that as you use a little more ink when you write the equal to, greater than or equal to sign than just the greater than, because you get the line underneath. So I just remember, hey, you got to use more ink when you put it on the number line and you use the closed dot. That's kind of how I always remembered it. Now, there's one little exception to this rule when you're solving this. When you're solving inequalities, it's a special rule. It's if you multiply or divide by a negative number, you have to flip the sign. So if it's showing greater than and you divide by a negative number or multiply by a number, you flip it over so it's showing less than. And that's the rule. That's the special rule. That's the only thing that's going to change. Okay? And then I actually got one up there. It shows a number line. So you can see how that works. It's less than to the left of the zero, greater than to the right of the zero. And just remember, when you're dealing with negative numbers, -7 is less than -5. You're going further to the left. It's getting smaller. So always think of it like the temperature. If it gets to be 2 degrees below zero or -4 degrees below zero, which is colder, it's the -4 degrees. So it's going to the left. It keeps going to the left. Okay? And that's all there is to it. Let's get down now to the problems we got. Okay? Ooh, I got to move this thing down. Whoop, didn't. We're all moving at the same time. Okay, let's see what we got. We got Solvent two-step inequality workshop. A good student sent these in, so let's solve them for them. Okay, so the first one is 5x plus 2 is less than or equal to 17. So we got to get the x by itself. So what I do first is, let's get this pen going. Pen, regular tip. Okay, I'd subtract 2 from both sides. So I subtract 2 from this side, and I subtract 2 from this side. Let's carry this down. The sign carries down. It stays the same. These two cross each other out. A +2 and a -2 cross each other out. They make 0. And we carry on the 5x. 5x. Now, the 17 gets carried down. -2 is 15. So now, we still got the x's attached to a multiplication of 5. So it's 5 times x. So the opposite of times is division. So let's divide both sides by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 0. So the x carries down. The sign stays the same because we didn't do any negative numbers. Okay? We didn't multiply or divide by a negative number. Now 5 divided by 15 is 3. And that's it. So the way you read this, it's always you start with the x side. So it's x is less than or equal to 3. So here's what I do first. I'd come to the 3 on the number line because I'm going to put it on the number line. And it's less than or equal to, so it uses more ink. So we're going to make a closed circle right there at the 3. And now the x is every number to infinity that includes this. So it's going smaller. And that's all there was to that. See how we just drew it down, okay? Let's go on to number 2, okay? Now, In this one here, it says 21 is less than or equal to 3 plus 9x. So let's get the x by itself. We got a 3 there. That's a positive 3. So let's do a negative 3. Subtract 3 from both sides. So we subtract 3 from this side. We subtract 3 from this side. The 9x gets carried down. 9x. The 3's cross each other out. A positive 3 and a negative 3 makes 0. Okay. Now 21 minus 3 is 18. Now the sign carries down, and it doesn't change because we didn't do any division or multiplication by negative numbers, okay? Now, we still have the x by its attached to a 9, so it's 9 times x, okay? So if we divide, the opposite of multiplication is division, so we divide both sides by x. This comes down to 2 is less than or equal to x. Now, that's a correct answer, but a lot of times people like the x on the left-hand side. It makes it just easy to read, but if you're reading this back to somebody, what you'd say is x is greater than or equal to 2, okay? So that's how you read it. You always read from the x side over, but if you want to change the x to the other side, you can. But here's what you have to do when you do it. X, don't forget, now the greater sign is facing towards the x, so it still has to face towards the x, okay? So see, nothing really changed, and it reads like that. So these two are equal, okay? So now when you plot on the number line, you find that the 2, which is the number, okay? So and it's greater than or equal to, that means it used a lot of ink, okay? So we make a closed circle, and it's going to be every number greater than 2. So they go this way, goes to the greater side. And that's all there was to that. So you just read this. X is greater than or equal to 2. And it's a closed circle, and it's every number bigger than 2. Okay? And that's all there was to that. Let's go down to the next problem. Number 3. It's 9 minus x is greater than 10. So here, let's get the 9 out of here. Okay? So we'll subtract 9 from both sides. Okay? So we subtract 9 from this side. And if we do it to one side, you know we got to do it to the other side, okay? So we subtract from 9 from there. These two 9's cross out, they make 0. So now we have a negative x. The sign stays the same because we didn't multiply or divide by a negative number yet. Now we get 10 minus 9 is 1. It's a positive 1. But now we have a negative x. We can't have a negative x. But in reality, this negative x is really negative 1 times x, correct? Equals 1. So it's really, every time you see a variable by itself, you can always put a 1 in front of it because it's going to be 1 times that. It doesn't change the value, but it does help you here because now, to get rid of the negative sign, you divide both sides by negative 1. So now these two cross out, and it comes down to x. But now that you've multiplied it, divided by a negative number, you got to flip the sign. Remember, that's a special rule for this. So now it would be like this. And now 1 divided by negative 1 is negative 1. Okay, so that means x is every number less than negative 1. Okay, but now you notice it's not equal to, so that means this is an open circle. We didn't use that much ink. So I put an open circle around the negative 1. And now x is going to be less than, so that means it's less than. That means it's going to the left. So this is how it looks. Just like that. Okay? So you see how we had to flip it because we divided by a negative number. Okay? And it would be work the same as if we were multiplying times the negative number. Okay? And that was all there was to that one. Let's go to the next one. We got 27 is less than or equal to 7x plus 6. So, hey, let's get rid of the 6, okay? So we subtract 6 from both sides. Subtract 6 from this side, subtract 6 from this side, okay? We carry things down. This is a 21, okay? The sign stays the same. We didn't divide by, we subtract these two. That comes to 0. The 7x gets carried down, 7x. Now the sign, we didn't divide by a negative number or anything yet, correct? Or multiply by a negative number. So we get like that, okay? We carry down the sign. Now, hey, let's get rid of the 7, okay? That's what's attached to the x, correct? So we divide by 7. So that means 3 less than x. And remember what I said? The way you'd read this would be x is greater than or equal to 3. Okay, that's the way you read it. But like a lot of people, they want the x on the other side, so you can do that. So let's put the x on the other side, x. But now remember, now the sign with the greater side is facing towards x. So that's the way you want it again, okay? You want to stick with the same way, and it's 3. So 3 is every number that's greater than or equal to 3. So that means if we put it on the 3 here, we color in the 3 because it used a lot of ink there, okay? And now it's greater than. So that means it goes this way. And that's all there was to that. Yeah, and we solved it. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my YouTube channel, it'll help my YouTube ratings. And remember what I always say is math can be fun. Thank you very much. You have a great day. Bye-bye.